Realities and Perceptions Part 3. This is my story, what is yours? Open for public comments and critics. Let us debate and not argue. An analogy of an African child. Please like and subscribe, for by doing so, you are saying viva to the development of underground African writers movement. The social classes. The first class. A photo depicting a member of a first class in the 21st century watching his subjects from above. In the early days of civilizations, the first class was made out of only aristocrats, who owned and controlled everyone and everything in sea and land, using the clergy, the army, the judicial and other institutes of information, the likes of schools and universities, to relay their agenda to the other classes. This went on until the birth of the New World in the 18th century, when the aristocrats' dominion was toppled by groups of political figures who promised the peasants a better and decent life with equal rights and justice for all, of which those perfect ideologies did not see the light of day until to date. The main reason why the New World is also failing, it's simply because the very political figures who rose against the old system were sponsored and depended on the very aristocrats' financial support in their campaigns. Hence, who depends on Caesar's as belongs to Caesar himself. And a handful of those who had extraordinary thinking brains took advantage of the situation and were able to rise above all odds and became the new aristocrats, of which the New World calls them the super rich, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Ruperts, the Oppenheimers families, and a very few more who were innovative and inventive by monopolizing their businesses. Thus nothing changed in terms of the systematical operation, but just the faces of a new first class that emerged, replacing the old. The New World owes its allegiance to the French Revolution and the formation of the USA. A photo of South African actors depicting a middle class of Africans of the 20th century. The working class, also called the middle class, was created to be the wall between the two original classes, which are the rich and the poor, in order to mediate between these two ends of the same stick. Formerly made out of the clergy, the army, the judicial and the information institutes, which played a great role on establishing great empires of yesteryears. Meanwhile, in the New World, the middle class grew to incorporate even mere laborers who formerly were not part of the class in the old system, including various industrial sector workers and farmers, who in fact are the backbone of an empire yet been secluded for many centuries. The middle class being a community of academically inclined and hard-working ordinary people who hail from peasantry themselves, yet wearing a sense of entitlement and high self-esteem because of their closeness to the aristocrats, are made to think they are just a few steps away from being part of the first class, forgetting where they came from, and all what is required from them is their expertise and labor, thus holding on to empty promises, protecting the interests of their masters and ignoring their true sense all their lifetimes, by working tirelessly and at the end retire with no inheritance to pass on, failing their generations to come as the cycle reoccurs after they are gone. As educated and hard-working they are, they spend their lives pursuing, protecting, and nurturing another man's dreams with barely a little moment for themselves or for their own families. They are always stressed with fatigue, planning on how to grow another man's empire for a certain fee called salary, that never will be enough for them to start a life of their own, thus making them chase after money all the days of their lives, like brain-dead junkies chasing after narcotic substances without finding any satisfaction in their endless pursuit. The sad part about this class is the fact that they tend to forget that soon as their services are no longer required in the system, they are expelled from the class and they lose their status, and that is when they realize then, that they always in fact were part of peasantry or the poor class, and begin being wiser a little when it is already late for action. They normally in their old age become regular clients to medical attention, because of the poor lifestyle they endure in their youth, as they spend all their years working hard and rest less, and worst of all, consuming fast foods because of not having sufficient time at all to aliment themselves with proper balanced food that needs to be home cooked, and thus their bodies fall victims of this impoverishment they seem not to understand, making their pension capital to end up paying for their health care or old age homes instead of enjoying it or investing it for their children. The third class. This photo depicts a 21st century generation of the African third class. The peasants or the poor is a society of real and very wise indigenous people in their habitat of origin who lead their lives independently from the CNS, surviving through farming the fields, livestock, and trading among themselves and abiding by the laws of their ancestors, yet being persecuted for generations for refusing to abide by foreign laws, thus enduring immense sufferance by being stripped the ownership of their lands, ways of life and beliefs and imposed upon sanctions in ways of taxations, rules, and regulations which are unnecessary and non-beneficial to their livelihood. In spite of all the inhumane treatment by the C&S's laws, this society still believes that the purpose of their very existence is to protect their habitat and their belief system as a people and relaying their stories to their upcoming generations to uphold the fundamental basis of life. A perfect example of these societies are those called gypsies in Europe, the Native Americans in the Far West, the Aborigines in Australia, the Khoi and the Sens in Africa, and all those called Amabinksa or Amakaba. These types of characters are actually found all over the world in their different habitats of origin that are secluded from the New World, yet imposed to it involuntarily. These brave people are likely the ones who normally emerge into greatest innovators, inventors, or leaders in greatest corporations that in return employ the very middle class that look down upon them during the process of stepping to aristocracy. And what makes them special is the fact that they understand from the beginning who they are and never mislead their intelligence for a second pretending to be something they are not, therefore having enough time to practice their inborn skills and knowledge to perfection, and should it be coincidentally in demand with time, they climb straight ahead to the throne of kings and queens of the corporate world indisputably. Their knowledge and understanding of life becomes very peculiar and intriguing to the new world of common knowledge acquired in commercial institutes of information, making them outstanding with a great ingenious status whenever it happens for an explorer of the new world to have an elaborate glance to their discoveries, though normally tends to be exploited and accredited unlawfully. To support this statement one can go back in time and recall the days of greatest inventions, which took place the most in the 19th century when the slaves called workers in this era created and developed machinery of all sorts to ease their labor but never were accredited to their inventions or innovations, instead the masters were. The science, the music, the sports we enjoy today, came from these mere poor people from different backgrounds and origins, yet the accolades were achieved by the CNS as always the case, and archived by wrongful names distorting history as always, yet a mind that chooses openness can easily tell the true origin of things from a lie that has been told in institutes of information to further suppress the masses. A lesson to be introspected in classes. In reality there are only two classes in life where either you are rich or poor, and nothing in between, making a middle class not a reality but a perception that keeps people enslaved indefinitely with the false hope of someday falling into the first class, which is impossible because of not having enough time to nurture their endeavor about anything they would wish to achieve, spending their lives molding another man's dream yet calling their own. The CNS created the modern slavery of well-instructed candidates they call themselves educated people to ensure its obligations to run smooth as a wheel on the rail, and made these candidates to believe through a severe indoctrination they undergo all their tertiary days that they make part of the system while they are mere tools to get the job done by the first class. The first and the third class spend their lifetimes brainstorming on what can be done to achieve dreams they envisage for the future, although some dreams fail yet others come to pass, and so are the lives of the real people are lived, for they both understand that failure is part of success. Without failure there would not be a progress, and once the working formula is achieved after having failed so many times, the middle class is deployed to slave on for a fee, and so the world rolls. Misconception in classes. A person from the first class mentality never seeks a job for a fee, just like the person from the third class, but rather work for free and gain an experience he requires, then creates his own enterprise leaving a legacy for generations to come. But in contrary, a person from the middle class mentality, educated as he could be, always is in need for a good paying job to sustain his lazy brain as he waits for the other classes to create a job for him, which he shall keep it for eternity, or hops from one to a better paying one all the days of his life and leaves no legacy to his offsprings. First class or the rich implies wealth accumulated and non-working for another man. Second class or middle class implies worker for a fee or slave of another man. Third class or poor implies, no wealth accumulated and non-working for another man. Check the similarities and differences by yourself and conclude the relativity. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, for by doing so you are saying viva to the development of underground African writers movement. See you in the next chapter.